Good day to you. This is my clip number 250 for the Science and Reason Talks, and we are at a critical juncture in COVID management. I want to talk a little about home management first and then get on to some topics common to all of us. So regarding home management, what you need to know is 139 is the common number. Once the PHI puts you on it, then you are in contact with a medical doctor who will be in contact with registrars and consultants. 40 family physicians have volunteered to be on call, and it's covered 24/7. So the danger points you need to know are these. Every day, once you are COVID positive, when you are being managed at home, every day you have to have a pulse oximeter and check your oxygen level. Thing about the oxygen level is, what is important is the exertion oxygen level. So you have to sit up and down for 10 seconds and check your pulse oximeter level. Once you do the 10-second thing, keep the pulse oximeter on your finger for 3 minutes more and observe it through 3 minutes, because the drop usually occurs at the end of 3 minutes. So if it drops below 94 any day, that you must be ready to go to hospital. You can't imagine and wait at home. Two, if daily you can do the exercise breathing test. That is, you inhale and hold your breath and count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you get it's one thing, it's a breathing exercise. Second thing, you get a sense of how much your lung is affected or not affected. That is also important to do that breathing test. Then during the time you are being home managed, you must be on absolute bed rest. You can't run around. Though you may feel okay, you can't run around. You must be on bed rest. And then to sleep prone with your belly down. Prone means that, and your shoulders a little up like that, with a few pillows or whatever, because that gives you the best chances of oxygenation of your lung and perhaps a bit of prevention of the secretions going into the wrong areas inside the lung. That is very important. And then there are many things that you can, the COVID process is firstly viral. Then when the virus spreads into the lung or the gut, it begins a cytokine attack. It's an immune attack. So you need to watch your gut. That is, particularly with this Delta variant, you get diarrhea. And in the lung also there can be a cytokine storm. So early treatment is directed at preventing the cytokine storm, which can be prevented. Many things that can be done. So there are two particular molecules that are not yet widely used. But what you can do is, there's a molecule called bromhexine, which is a cough syrup that is useful to prevent the reaction of the lung and the gut. Then there's a molecule called promethazine, used for a long time, that also can prevent. And then taking vitamin D, a large dose, 60,000 at the beginning, is important, and daily doses. Zinc, there are protocols for this, so please send to my WhatsApp number. Don't phone me. Send a WhatsApp to my WhatsApp number 076 313 4800. If you are abroad, +94 76 313 4800, then I can send you the entire protocol that you can follow. So the important thing, the Sinhala version of this will be tomorrow at about, let's say, 1 in the afternoon or so, or 2 in the afternoon. I'll be doing the Sinhala version of the same thing. Similar things have been done. So this is the 250th one. I'm Dr. Lalith Mendis. My last substantive post, official post, was as head of the Department of Pharmacology in a state medical faculty. That's why I speak a lot on pharmacology. And I have my app, which is available, download free, Golden Nuggets, from Google or from Apple Store. It has in Sinhala and in English, and few talks are translated into Tamil. So the danger points when you are in home management, if your fever continues beyond the 5th day, then you need to expect some lung involvement. Then then your doctor will tell you to get a CRP and a full blood count. If the CRP is going up, that means your lung is going to get involved. If the fever is continuing beyond day 5, that means your lung is going to get involved. And if you get a severe diarrhea, you need to take Jeevani, oral rehydration solution, and keep yourself well rehydrated. And sometimes, because COVID process diminishes your immunity, you have to take an antibiotic. These are things, of course, the doctor has to prescribe. Sometimes you feel well for the first 5 days, then suddenly you can get a diarrhea or a headache, or diarrhea, or fever spike. Particularly on the 8th day, you have to watch it. If your fever is continuing and having lung involvement, on the 8th day you must not watch anymore. You have to get ready to go to a hospital, however difficult it is. So these are something about the home management. Then when the CRP is going up, it's not a good sign. And then in your full blood count, if the neutrophil lymphocyte ratio is over 5.4, what happens with this COVID virus is it gets into our own lymphocytes, CD4 T cell lymphocytes, and it multiplies in them, and it sends off triggers making our own CD8 T lymphocytes to attack our own body tissue. So when that is happening, the COVID process is quite advanced. So at that time, that we want to give these early molecules that are effective, that can stop that. That's what the protocol is about. Then you will not get lung damage, you will not get lung thrombosis, you will not get hypoxia. As you know, if we can prevent people lose oxygen desaturation, is a terrible thing. If we can prevent it, that would be great. A study in Netherlands have used Ceylon cinnamon aldehyde, which is cinnamon, to help in the lung reaction. So cinnamon tea is also a possible thing to keep the lung immunity controlled. So there is a molecule used by Professor Didier de Raoult in France, then a treatment process used by Professor Thomas Borody in Australia. Then the Oxford Stoic trial said if lung involvement is there, you can use budesonide inhaler, which is an inhaler used for asthma, common inhaler, and that will also be helpful to reduce the lung reaction. So these are some of the things that might be helpful to remember. So long before your lung gets involved and you get into trouble, certain things can be done. You need to be aware of that. Then from that point, what else should I be? Then when you come home after a COVID management, you have to take it completely easy. For the next 14 days also, you have to be on bed rest. You can't run around doing things because your lung has been involved, your immune system has been involved very badly. It needs time to recover. There are certain things that you can take in the recovery process. A bowl of fruit, pineapple has bromelain, oranges have flavonoids. I can send you a full list if you ask for the full COVID protocol that you can manage from home. You need to be aware of it. Many patients are managed from home. Our government doctors are doing a heroic job. They somehow take you into government hospitals if you are desaturating, so don't panic too much. Private sector doctors are also doing a heroic job, but often private sector rooms can be full, but as soon as it gets vacant, they somehow try to. So our medical, nursing, health staff has done very well. So that's about, today I want to look at a little paragraph about generational succession, how it is going. You know, we can see that the 65-year-old scientists are suggesting certain things and the 45-year-old scientists are not listening. So when the virus leak came, and now it is definite that it was made in a lab, so there was quite a lot of disconnection between what the fathers of science, even in academia, were saying, and what the 45-year-old, 50-year-old people who are now academic heads in charge of medical journals or universities were doing. So there is a real generational disconnect. How did this come about? So let me read to you a little passage of scripture. There is going to be a generation, those who diminish their father and those who do not bless their mother. So this is one generation is meant to keep space and time, opportunity for the next generation. We can see we were on the verge of greatness in 1970. We have, by 1970, we recovered from the Second World War. People thought Second World War was the end of the world. It was so bad. But the Good Shepherd, the great designer, in his great grace, made provision for us to recoup. And by 1970, the world was set for greatness. In 1970, the GDP of the world divided between, let's say, 70% of the GDP was handled by 30% of the people. So there was an equality, but it was not too bad. Come 1990, the 90% of the GDP were controlled and was enjoyed by 10% of the people. Come 2010, 99% of the GDP went into the hands of 1%. By that time, global plutarchs, global elite were planning how to get hold of all the resources of every country into the hands of a few. That's what pandemic has done. Jeff Bezos is owner of $267 billion. Even if he gives $1 billion to each one on the planet, he will still have a lot more remaining. So the inequality has greatly increased, and we can see that nations, governments are struggling. The actual economic callers are not the government, but those who manipulate the finances. So the government can't be a father, and the next generation seems to have no sustenance possible, because in this generation we have consumed everything. So this passage tells us there is a generation who diminishes the father and does not bless the mother. So at the beginning, we got our mandate saying, be fruitful, multiply, and fill your portion, and then steward others into their space and into their time. So this generation lives and works to sustain the next generation, while they look after the former generation, now which is retired. So the fathers and this present generation, let's say the 75-year-olds, the 50-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, were always to work at tandem together. That's what generational succession is, looking after fathers and doing well for the next generation. That whole thing has ruptured. You have a generation of moguls, economic, scientific, plutarchs. They have carved out their own branches of science, their own ways of doing science. So during this pandemic and planning of pandemic science, the 65 to 70-year-olds were completely set aside, and a very vociferous 45-year-old globalist view scientist, younger set, has taken over all the controls of the pandemic. Now Israel is in trouble again because COVID is spreading, and a third jab is recommended and it is in place. India overcame the pandemic with a certain drug which can be given early. Now we are hoping in Sri Lanka that it will be widely made available. At present it is somewhat available, but we are hoping that the government would make a policy that this that drug would be made frontline for treatment and when necessary for prevention. So if you have heard about that drug, you must remember that's not for everybody, but for those who are first contacts of a COVID patient, and for frontline workers like health workers, those who are constantly exposed to the virus, possibly janitors and shop owners, people like that who face public all the time. So that's a bit about the drug thing, but let me get on to the sociological aspect of this. But then the second feature is there is a generation, so it's a It's across the society. When you say generation, it's not one or two. Across the society, that is a generation who is pure in their own eyes and not washed from their filthiness. That means anything was okay to consume. Pornography, sexual revolution. So they did not think that there were moral boundaries. So we know without moral boundaries we will perish. So I want to look at your life and see how is the plot of your life. How is the plot of your life? How much fertile ground? How much marsh ground? How much stony ground? How much thorny ground? How to increase the harvest of your life is the cry of your heart. And how the Good Shepherd gave it is, be fruitful, multiply. You have it in your heart. And how do you multiply? By launching a second generation even better than you, next generation. You do it in your own family, you do it at work, so you do it at science, you do it in profession. So every professional is a benefactor, and those who come to you, to the doctor or to the lawyer, they are beneficiaries. That's how the Good Shepherd designed the world, benefactors and beneficiaries. We were not supposed to be pharaohs and serfs. That's where the world is heading. Pharaohs got all the work out and they built massive edifices for themselves while the population was in slavery. That's what is now happening when the wealth of nations, 99.99, is in the hands of 0.01% of the world's elite. That's what real slavery is. We have gone back to modern slavery at the height of scientific achievement. So we can see that height of scientific achievement and brain brilliance is shrinking the heart. Brain and the heart seems to be having a inverse relationship like Boyle's law, pressure and volume. So some time ago, when I had become first in the island in the A-level examination, those days we used to do botany, zoology, chemistry and physics. Then I entered Colombo Medical Faculty, where I was batch top in every examination. I am Dr. Lalith Mendis. Every examination I was batch top. Then I found when my scientific genius increased, my heart values decreased. That's the relationship. That's the point at which I had a life change, and I said, without a Good Shepherd, a man's brain will one day stop the world because the brain would have no compass. Brain without a compass is dangerous. That's what each epoch, at the height of each epoch, at one stage came the French Revolution, then came the Napoleonic Wars, then at the height of scientific genius of the 19th century came the First World War. Then again at the height of the scientific genius came the Second World War. Science is wonderful, true science. But when science is politicized, it's a terrible enemy. So we have heard this, that money is a good servant and a bad master. We have now come to learn science is a good servant and a bad master. Science has no moral compass. We have to give it the moral compass, yes. Otherwise, those who have much will think population increase is the problem. How to preserve Earth's ecology, how to preserve Earth's temperature, how to reduce food consumption. That's how people will begin to think when science becomes the master. When science is master, it will be a cruel master. This I got to understand. That's how I said, I need a Good Shepherd who will keep my heart in good tone. He promises you will not want in your life, and he promises I have a green patch of earth for you. But your green patch of earth stops where the next man's green patch of earth begins. So there are boundaries. Do well in your green patch, and then do well for others also. That's how the Good Shepherd comes in. And he promises next water hole, next extension will have to do with the next generation. Think of them all the time. So we have a generation that has consumed and busted everything. That's the sad place at which we are, and we are now in the throes of a pandemic which has taken school life out of children, play life out of children, vocational training out of youth. We are in a pretty predicament, isn't it? Not a pretty predicament, a real ugly predicament. So this is about consuming everything. Then there third feature of the generational disconnect. There is a generation of how lofty are their eyes and how their eyelids are raised in arrogance. So there is a generation that nothing is the limit, and whatever they have, it's not enough. So you get a real generation of moguls, economic moguls. They want to go to space just for fun, when the world is in the throes of a pandemic. So everybody is thinking of their next greatness. The service factor has gone out. That's the sad thing, that we are not teaching another generation, because we are faltering at this point of always thinking only of my thing and how to expand it as much as I can. The fourth feature, there is a generation whose teeth are like swords, whose jaw teeth are like knives. So that means they are very vociferous in their stance. Others don't get a word in, others don't get a voice in. Their voice, their opinion is always right. So there's a generation that has got hold of the medical journals, that got hold of the mainstream media. You'll be fact-checked and fake-checked if your opinion is not that of the system. So there's a system that is established and is opinionated. Every other opinion is considered hostile and for elimination. So we have really come to Orwell's farm, where only the fit should survive. That's not how the Good Shepherd made it. He made it that all can have a chance. But the world for the last 50 years has been moving, and now they are fine-tuning. Actually, they are fine-tuning the Bastilles of the scientific world. Bastille was the old French Bastille. They are fine-tuning the guillotines of the scientific world. It's the same old epoch-marking revolution. Robespierre put Dante on the guillotine. Dante was the more philosophical kind, but foolish enough to work with a fellow like Robespierre. Dante looked at Robespierre and said, "One day you will be here." And that happened, because French Revolution and all revolutions say more blood has to be shed to keep the revolution going. Story of the cross is that one person gave his life, the Good Shepherd, that we may learn better, so that he is not righting wrongs, W-R-I-T-I-N-G, but he is righting wrongs, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G. And he looks for people with whom he can do this all the time. Little beacons of light, little lighthouses, a little lamp that shines in a dark place. That's your call and my call. In science, professions, if you are in politics, economics, that's your call and my call. So watch out for this, the kind of generation whose teeth are like swords and their jaw teeth are like knives. That generation you can find on the mainstream media. Nobody else gets a chance. So it is science by Guardian, science by BBC, science by press interviews. It's no more peer-reviewed science, but it is peer-obstructed science. Since I am published on PubMed on medical topics like migraine, irritable bowel syndrome, aspirin, levodopa, Parkinsonism, quite a few topics, I think I have some little room, space to speak on science, being a man of science. Yes, you can access my learned articles on the PubMed and NIH, NIB as B.L. Mendis or Lalith Mendis. Yes. So that's the kind of the media war that is going on with swords and sharp teeth. See this ancient document. It's called Proverbs chapter 30. Gives a generational disconnect, and it gives the features of a generation that hyenas will rule. I'm taking the Lion King, and the hyenas are really making a lot of sound. Their teeth are very sharp. Yes. Then the fifth feature that they will show is they will devour the poor of the earth and the needy from among men. So increasingly, large swath of the population will become poor. They will lack medical facilities, they will lack educational facilities, and they will be considered the non-productive to be eliminated. because they are so poor. That's where the world is getting into. Yes. Don't be too euphemistic. Don't take it for what I say. Just be a little scientific. All my scientific talks are available on the app Golden Nuggets. You can download it from Google or Apple Store. Yes. Any other clips you need, particularly the protocols on home management of COVID, please send me a WhatsApp message to +9476 if you are in Sri Lanka, 076 313 4800. Yes. Then this, I think now the sixth feature, the leech has two daughters, give three things that will never be satisfied. So there is a generation who are saying it's not enough, give us more, it's not enough. So they earn like that. Many nations' resources are into the hands of a few global plutarchs, oligarchs, global dinosaurs, and they are planning how to get more resources into their hands. And global organizations, including the health one, is really facilitating that global health transfer. In the midst of the pandemic, that also has happened, the global wealth transfer into the hands of a few. 1 year has produced 13 more billionaires. Normally, you know, you need a lifetime to become a billionaire, but last year produced 13 more billionaires. World's richest three became 3 times richer. Yes. Then the seventh feature is there is a generation that are like the ravens of the valley. And so what are ravens like? They make a lot of sound, they grab, they quarrel, they want it all. So that's a description, a bit of archaic language, but I want you to turn it around and see whether it's a true description of what's happening in the world today. The generational disconnect where the Earth generation has taken it all. Fathers have no place of input in governance, economics, and science. 45-year-olds are the masters who rule the world. You can watch for the countries which this effect is more severe, and then the next generation has very little to work on. So is it a dead-end generation that we have consumed so much? I'm not getting into the ecological front. The real issue of ecology is not on the surface of the earth. Real issue of ecology is in the ocean bed. Our corals are down worldwide to 40%. If our kidneys are down to 33%, we call it chronic renal failure. And corals are the kidneys of the world because corals maintain the acid-base balance, the pH value of the world. In the human body, pH value is 7.4. All enzymes have predetermined pH values, plants, animals, all living systems. They cannot operate unless they have that pH value. So in the ecological system, it's a corals submarine in the ocean bed that keeps it going. And corals are down to 40%. And that they maintain the pH value and they absorb the bicarbonate when the carbon dioxide dissolves. What will happen when the world's corals are down to 33%? Will the world get chronic renal failure? That's a good question to ask. So that's a little bit of a resume of how far gone things really are. While the climate debate goes on and a lot of argument about fossil fuels and so on, global warming, the real problem is in the corals that are down to 40%. And we produce 70% of our oxygen in the ocean beds with those little green plantation of the ocean bed. Oceans, undulating mountains in the ocean bed are taller than Mount Everest. So our surface for oxygen production, chlorophyll surface, is more in the ocean bed than on the surface. So these are some things that are relevant when we consider what has this generation done and how will the next generation survive. Thank you for listening. I hope this talk is useful.